I'm Rick Kaler. Thanks for joining me. Undoubtedly, you're probably aware that the U.S. has reached its debt limit again. The debt limit is roughly $31 trillion. That means the Treasury Department has borrowed as much as it is allowed by the last debt ceiling measure passed by Congress, which is an amount that's really entirely arbitrary. To avoid defaulting on the federal government's obligations, Congress must raise the debt ceiling. Now, this is nothing new. The U.S. has reached the debt ceiling some 80 times since 1960, and Congress has increased it every time. The federal debt ceiling is nothing like a personal, corporate, or municipal debt limit. It's not, for example, like a mortgage lender evaluating your income and credit score to determine how much you can borrow to buy a house. As the U.S. Treasury website explains, the debt limit does not authorize new spending commitments. It simply allows the government to finance existing legal obligations that Congresses and presidents of both parties have made in the past. Congress has yet to raise the current debt ceiling. The Treasury has done some maneuvering, used some creativity to slow down payments it's obligated to make in what it deems to be inessential areas like contributions to government employee retirement plans. If the showdown in Congress continues, Treasury will add more visible items to the list like interest and principal payments to government bondholders, Social Security benefits, Medicare reimbursements, payments to federal contractors, and the salaries of federal employees. We probably won't reach that point until sometime in the late spring because current tax revenues help fund some of those obligations. If the government becomes unable to pay interest on government bonds, the U.S. would be considered in default of its sovereign debt. At that time, the U.S. could no longer borrow money from individuals, corporations, or governments, which includes itself. Yes, about 35% of the U.S. debt is owed to itself in one form or another. Now, this is another way that the federal debt ceiling differs from other debt limits, which involve an inability to obtain new loans from other entities. No one but a government that issues its own currency can borrow money from itself. So if you and I had a debt limit and we were allowed to create money or print money, that would be very peculiar. we could print the money over here, write a note, and basically our right hand owes our left hand that amount. It's very unusual. So the U.S. Treasury's biggest lender is its central bank, which is the Federal Reserve Bank. Unlike every other bank, the Federal Reserve Bank has no shareholders. It is not owned by anyone. It derives its authority from Congress as the central bank of the U.S. government, and it's governed by an independent board whose members are appointed by the president and confirmed by the Senate for terms of 14 years. So the bottom line is that the U.S. Treasury and the Federal Reserve are both controlled or governed by the U.S. government. Where does the Federal Reserve Bank get the money that it can lend to the U.S. Or to the Treasury? Well, like every other central bank, it creates it. It prints it. No other person, corporation, or government can create money except the federal government. This means the U.S. government can technically never run out of U.S. dollars to pay its bills. The Federal Reserve can create and loan to the Treasury all the money needed to cover the government's obligations. The only thing that stops the Treasury from borrowing money from its left hand, the Federal Reserve, is the debt ceiling. While other countries, including Poland and Germany, have a debt brake to keep debt under a certain percentage of their GDP, only the U.S. and Denmark have specified debt ceilings. Denmark's, unlike that of the U.S., is set high enough to avoid the recurring need to increase it. This might be a clue that the U.S. debt ceiling system is less than ideal. If the current congressional brinksmanship continues until the U.S. is in default, the economic consequences globally, nationally, and for individuals is going to be severe. Thanks for listening.